But of course there isn't jobs for folks around here, and they go to work at towns, into city, into York. And of course if you were to talk to them in dialect, they wouldn't know what the world you were talking about.
Owen Bealby's conversation is riddled with Viking words like adel, meaning to earn.
You're going to do a job because you want to earn some money. You want to adel some brass, as we would say in Yorkshire. Mun, it means you must. And laup, well, it means to jump. Laup out the yacht, jump over the gate. A stoup is a gate post, you see. Well, your, or bag, is the udder of a milking cow, milk cow. To tame is emptying, pouring, or anything, you see. You tame your bucket into its sile. It's a strainer, is sile. You sit on a little three-leg steel and get your head stuck into the odd cow's side. By God, it was a grand job on a frosty morning.
Owen's surname, Bealby, is Norse, but he actually lives in Bolton, which is Anglo-Saxon. Names ending in ton, like Malton and Pocklington, are typically Saxon. So are place names ending in wick, ing, ford, and borough, as in Pulborough.
I tell you, I've missed Mr. Vaughan. Hasn't got a lot of
like the Viking names, Anglo-Saxon endings are also descriptive. Tun was an enclosure. Ham was a town. Stead meant a site. Stow, a place, often religious. And wold meant a hill. Both the Anglo-Saxon and Viking place names of the Danelaw have traveled across the English-speaking world to places like Scarborough in Canada, Derby in Australia, to Boston in America, or Wellington, New Zealand. Here in Yorkshire, the postman's mixed bag is a clue to what happened to the language in England when Viking and Saxon lived side by side. Professor Tom Shippey is a Yorkshireman who is fluent in Old Norse and Old English. He has studied what happened when the two languages came face to face.
We're up here where Wharfdale meets Langstrothdale. It's a very mixed area linguistically. You get pure English names like Buckton and pure Norse names like Starbottom. And you get mixtures like Kettlewell or Hubberholme or Jochensthwaite. It's so mixed and they're so close to each other, it makes you wonder what language they were talking in this valley back there 1,000 years ago when the Norse were beginning to come in. Consider what happens if Jochensson from Jochensthwaite, call him Rap, comes down the valley and decides to marry an English girl from Buckden, call her Edith, and they decide to set up home over there near Hubberholme. Rap's a Norse speaker, Edith is an English speaker. What language are they going to talk in the farm? It could get very awkward, to use a Norse term.
And then suppose that Rap and Edith want to buy a horse for their cart. In Old English, cart was wain, from which we get the traditional hay wain.
Rap, who is Norse, who is a husband, that's a Norse word, and his wife Edith, wife being an English word, they have a neighbour, comes from Buckden, and he's English, and he's called Edgar, and he decides to sell Rap a horse. And Edgar comes up to Rap, and he says to him, in English, "It's willa they sellan, that horse, they drageth me no wine." Now Rap, if he was going to say that, would say something rather similar. He would say, "Ek mun selja there, crossit, sem dreger vaugen min." Now, Rap and Edgar have no great problem here on words. Rap says wagen, and Edgar says wine. Rap says cross, and Edgar says horse.
Rap and Edgar's confusion is essentially based on one thing. It's all a question of word endings. Rap says crossit for one horse, but crossin for two horses. Edgar says that horse for one horse, but the horse for the plural.
Easy, quiet, and go down.
It's all a question of word endings. Rapp says hrosit for one horse, but hrosin for two horses. Edgar says that horse for one horse, but the horse for the plural.
Is it quiet and good down there?
Oh, I just want one. And it's very striking that what modern English has decided to do about it is to drop the whole problem. Instead of having all this that, the, in, it business, we just say the for everything. We don't attempt to change it at all. And similarly, when it comes to plurals, instead of having a system, as you had in proper Old English, where you said stan, stanas, horse, horse, ship, shipu, boke, beach, we scrap the whole thing and we say stone, stones, horse, horses, ship, ships, book, books.
So when Viking and Saxon met face to face, English achieved the first of its great simplifying compromises. After the expulsion of the Celts, it was one of the most significant steps in the evolution of modern English.
Well, there's an irony in all this, I think, and the irony is this. If you looked round in the year 1000 and said, where are the centres of power for the language, you might say it's in London where the king is, or it's in Winchester where they have the trained scribes and the people writing manuscripts. But actually, the place where the language was developing in the direction that was going to be modern English was places like this. The ancestor of modern English is created in places like Wharfdale.
Shippey's argument that English not only survived but triumphed is supported by some persuasive evidence here in Kirkdale, North Yorkshire. In about the year 1000, some Viking settlers set about repairing this little church. In the porch is a sundial. The man who commissioned the work has the resoundingly Viking name Gamal Sun. But on closer inspection, his inscription turns out to be in Old English. Barely 100 years after his people invaded, Gamal Sun is writing in the language of his former enemies. The power of English to stand up to invasion, war, and social upheaval faced the supreme test in 1066. Harold Godwinson was to be the last English-speaking king for nearly 300 years. The third and most famous invasion in this story began in France. Duke William of Normandy assembled a fleet and launched his forces across the Channel. In the words of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, then William, Earl of Normandy, came to Pevensey.
There kom Wilhelm, Earl of Normandy, into Pevensey.
Harold the King gathered then a great army.
Harold the King gathered there mycket här.
William came against him unawares before his people were assembled.
Wilhelm him kom on igen on unwär, his folk he fulket were.
There was slain King Harold and many good men, and the French wielded power over that place of slaughter.
There were for slacken Harold the King and fella godra man, and the Frankiskan achton well stoa your world.
The word castle comes from French.